Crime A is the fifth episode of the fifth season of The Office. This is directed by Jennifer Celotta, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's a fabulous episode. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. There are some really great moments. Phyllis was amazing. There are three parts to the narrative, so I'll talk about each of those in turn, and one of them wasn't really that interesting. Pam's got a job at corporate thanks to Michael. I feel like that's a good way to keep her around. I assume we'll get more out of that in future episodes. Jim is at the pub with the warehouse guys. He goes for a drink. He bumps into Roy, which I wasn't expecting. I just kind of assumed we'd never see Roy again. And Jim decides to go and see Pam, but while driving there, it also made me question, it's quite late, it's quite dark, he's driving there. When do the camera crew ever clock off? I never really considered that before. Obviously the camera crew is with him, and he decides, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not that guy, and we're not that kind of couple, which honestly just felt a little bit underwhelming. I didn't really think it was that interesting. Then we come to, gosh, I was going to discuss my next favourite part, but I don't know if I prefer Michael and Holly or the story focusing on Dwight. Let's talk about Dwight. Andy has handed out save the date cards, and Dwight, while making a knife with a knife, is approached by Phyllis, who is of course aware of what's going on, and she says to him, "You know I know. You know they know." As she turns to the camera, I just absolutely loved it. Dwight's not having any of it, and he ultimately goes to Phyllis later on and asks her what's happening, basically, and she explains to him, and I thought this was pretty interesting because I've always questioned the relationship, but she says to him, Angela's not really a risk taker and Andy's not really a risk. It makes sense. I'd never really thought of it like that before. It definitely makes it seem a little bit more believable because I'm still, even now, struggling to see why Angela really wants to marry Andy. And I guess the main reason for that is because we don't really see them together a lot. Personally, we don't get an intimate look at their relationship, which I think is by design. So it's difficult to believe. And even now, I still think she's doing it to get back at Dwight. I don't really know what's going to happen there. And Dwight, I think Dwight's realising Phyllis is an ally. Instead of being irritated that Phyllis knows, he now turns to her for help. And he says to her, "I know she loves me, Phyllis." Which I have to agree with. And then I don't necessarily agree with what he did next. He approached Angela and basically said, leave Andy for me. You have until 6:14 to decide, which is not how you treat somebody. And we have this auction happening, which I'll talk about in a moment, and Dwight's watch goes off at 6:14. And he turns to Angela, and we see Angela just turning her head to make sure she's looking exactly at Andy. And Dwight looks wounded. And it's honestly not what I expected, to be honest. I didn't expect Angela to run back to Dwight completely with open arms, but I didn't expect that, so I don't know what to expect going forward. And then Dwight is annoyed and is getting, not necessarily aggressive, but agitated around Phyllis, who ends up slapping him, which was quite a moment. So I feel for Dwight here. In some ways, Dwight's a very unlikable individual. I love him as a character, but in real life, I feel like he'd be quite unlikable. But there are times where we really see his vulnerability and desperation, and it hurts. It does. So definitely an interesting part of the episode. And then we come to Michael and Holly. I love their matched energy. They are so perfect together. And they are going on their third date. They're going to have sex. Holly takes Michael back into the office because she forgot her keys. She didn't. She just wanted to be away from the cameras. And then we cut to the next day. And somebody had broken in and stolen a bunch of stuff. And Michael and Holly realised maybe in their moment of passion, they kind of forgot to lock the door afterwards. And clearly they're feeling quite guilty about this. So Michael decides to have Crime Aid, where they can auction off things that each of them can provide and things that other people can offer, services, goods, and people will bid on them to help recuperate the losses. And they come up with various ideas, and we have some brilliant moments. Phyllis is talking about how they used to do something similar at her sorority. And Michael says, was this a sorority that you didn't get into, so you had to kind of form your own? And Phyllis just looks at him and says, move on, Michael. It's so brief, but so brilliant. And then Michael says, we'll auction off people like they did in the olden days. And the camera immediately, very briefly, but very effectively, focuses on Stanley, who just turns to look. And his expression said a lot. It was an awful thing for Michael to say, but very, very well executed. And we then have the auction, and it's great fun. It's a really nice atmosphere. I really enjoyed it. I wish we'd seen a bit more of it, but we didn't need to. We got a lot out of it, and various things are auctioned off. And then Phyllis's hug is the last thing to be auctioned off, and it went down really, really well, and it was an absolute joy. It's a great episode for Phyllis. I thought she was fabulous. Not such a great episode for Dwight. It was not great seeing him behaving in a way that clearly showed he was wounded, frustrated, hurting. Not all of his behaviour was acceptable, but a lot of it was understandable. And I honestly didn't expect that from Angela. I don't know what I expected. As I said, I didn't think she would just suddenly run towards him and tell Andy to get lost. But I don't know, I expected maybe asking for more time or something. I don't know. Or maybe just even doing something physical with Dwight, not really giving him an answer, but making it very clear that she didn't want that to end. I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea what that is going to happen going forward. I do like the fact that we're now shifting away from Pam and Jim. I love Pam and Jim, but obviously with so much focusing on will they, won't they, well, we now know that they will, and they are. So we get a chance to focus on some other couples and some other aspects of the show, which I really like. Oh, and right at the very end, David said, "No, I did not know that Michael was dating Holly." I don't like that. I do not like that, because that is ominous. I don't know what that means. Maybe it will be brushed under the rug. Maybe nothing will come of it, but it sounded a bit of a concern. So I love seeing Michael happy. I love Michael. I never thought I'd say that. I hated season 1 Michael, but I do. I love Michael. Holly is brilliant. They're so good together. Let's not have a repeat of the mess that happened with Jan and corporate. And, I don't know. I really don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. But for now, I'm pleased to say that Crime Aid was a really thoroughly, fabulously enjoyable episode of The Office.